Angad woke earlier than usual that morning. The first light of dawn had only begun touching the city when he stepped out and walked towards the public tap. The water was cold. He stood beneath it without hesitation. Minutes later, he emerged cleaner than he looked in weeks. The faint smell of cheap cologne lingered around him. When Balika saw him, she paused for a moment, then smiled. As they walked towards a small hotel for breakfast, a faded flex banner hanging across the junction caught Angad's attention. A temple festival, Kanak Durga Temple, Jhargram. 2 days of celebrations, large crowds expected. His eyes remained on the banner for several seconds. Then he continued walking. The thought stayed with him. By evening, the decision had already been made. At 4:30, Angad and Balika boarded a bus heading towards Jhargram. The city slowly gave way to open stretches of road. Buildings disappeared. Trees took their place. The evening sun drifted lower across the horizon. Neither spoke much during the journey. 45 minutes later, they stepped off the bus and joined the stream of people moving towards the temple. The festival had already begun. Devotees moved in and out of the temple grounds. Vendors occupied every available corner. The scents of incense mixed with temple flowers and roasted peanuts. Loudspeakers carried chants across the evening air. After offering prayers, Angad began looking around. Not at the temple, at the crowd, at the pathways, at the spaces between the stalls. Then he noticed it. The entire temple ground had been divided into marked sections. Each space had already been allotted. Vendors, performers, traders. Angad stood silently for a few moments, then started walking towards the temporary office near the entrance. Balika followed. The office stood beneath a canvas roof. Plastic chairs surrounded a wooden table. A middle-aged woman sat at the center of it all. People approached her one after another. Money exchanged hands, instructions were given, spaces allotted. Everything within the festival grounds appeared to pass through her approval. Angad stopped a few feet away. A brief exchange followed between him and Balika. Moments later, Balika stepped forward. She explained that Angad was an artist, that he needed only a small patch of ground, that they were willing to pay. The woman barely looked up. Her response came immediately. There was no space for beggars. Balika tried again, patiently, respectfully. The woman rose from her chair. Her face hardened. What followed happened so suddenly that several people nearby turned around. Balika stumbled backwards. A stack of plastic chairs crashed to the ground with her. The office fell silent for a moment. Then life resumed around them as though nothing had happened. Balika remained on the ground for several seconds. Dust clung to her clothes. Angad stood motionless. His jaw tightened, but he said nothing. He walked over, helped Balika up and led her away from the office. Neither spoke. They stopped only after reaching the far end of the temple grounds. Balika brushed the dust from her clothes. Angad stood looking towards the crowd, towards the temple, towards the noise around them. Then he turned around and started walking back towards the office. This time, Angad was alone. The woman looked up as he approached. The irritation on her face remained unchanged. Angad spoke briefly. He was willing to pay, whatever the rate was. All he needed was a small space. The woman studied him for a moment, then named her price. 300 rupees for 2 hours, not a minute more. Angad reached into his pocket. A 500 rupee note appeared in his hand. He placed it on the table. The woman picked it up. The balance was never discussed. Neither of them seemed interested in the subject. The transaction was over. A small patch of ground near one of the pathways was assigned to him. Nothing special, just another marked section among dozens of others. Angad turned around and walked away. Balika was waiting where he had left her. Without a word, he motioned for her to follow. The allotted space lay beneath a flickering lamp. Dust covered most of the surface. The crowd flowed past in an endless stream. Children, families, pilgrims, vendors, nobody paid them much attention. Not yet. Angad placed his bag on the ground, then sat down. For a few moments, he remained completely still. Then his hand disappeared into the bag. A moment later, it emerged again. The familiar ritual followed. The noise around him slowly drifted into the background. Then he reached for the chalk. The first line appeared. Long, deliberate. Without hesitation, another followed. Then another. The empty patch of ground slowly surrendered itself to the image taking shape upon it. Balika watched silently. People began slowing down, then stopping, then gathering. The crowd grew steadily. Children moved closer. Adults stood behind them. Conversations faded. The drawing continued to grow. Larger, darker. More detailed with every passing minute. A woman slowly emerged from the chalk. Her hair flowed wildly around her shoulders. Her pot rested against her chest. The poster carried echoes of something familiar, yet the face did not. There was nothing gentle about it, nothing comforting. The image seemed to stare back at the crowd, and the crowd stared right back. Nobody left. The final line appeared almost 2 hours later. Then the chalk fell silent. For the first time since he had begun, Angad leaned back and looked at the image before him. The crowd remained where it was. Nobody seemed eager to leave. For several moments, the festival grounds around that small patch of earth felt strangely quiet. Then someone applauded, a single pair of hands. Then another and another. Soon the sound spread through the gathering crowd. People moved closer. Many searched their pockets. Coins appeared first, then small currency notes, one by one. They landed near the edge of the drawing. Children dragged their parents forward. Visitors pointed towards the image from across the pathway. Others stopped simply because everyone else had stopped. The crowd continued growing. For a brief period, the drawing became part of the festival itself. Angad said nothing. He simply sat there watching. The chalk still rested in his hands. A few feet away, another pair of eyes watched the gathering crowd. The contractor lady. She stood near one of the stalls. For several moments, she observed the drawing. Then she looked at the crowd surrounding it, then at the money scattered around it, then at her watch. The allotted time had expired. The crowd remained, the drawing remained. Only her patience disappeared. She walked towards a nearby water point, picked up a bucket and returned. The crowd parted instinctively. Nobody understood what she intended to do, not until it was too late. The bucket tilted forward, water rushed across the drawing. The chalk dissolved instantly. Colors bled into one another. Lines disappeared. Shapes collapsed. The woman's face vanished first, then the pot, then everything else. Within seconds, 2 hours of work had become a muddy stain on the ground. The applause stopped. The conversation stopped. Even the crowd seemed unable to understand what had just happened. Angad remained where he was, motionless. Even the crowd seemed unable to understand what had just happened. Angad remained where he was, motionless. The contractor threw the empty bucket aside, then turned and walked away, as if nothing of importance had occurred. Nobody followed her, nobody stopped her, nobody spoke. The crowd began dispersing slowly, one person at a time. The festival reclaimed its noise, its movement, its rhythm. Within minutes, only Angad and Balika remained beside the ruined drawing. The colors continued fading until almost nothing was left. For a long time, Angad stared at the ground, not at the crowd, not at the money, not at the contractor, at the ground. The last traces of image disappeared before his eyes. Then, very slowly, he stood up. His eyes searched the crowd. They found the contractor. She was speaking to someone near the entrance, laughing, completely unaware of him. For several moments, Angad remained perfectly still. Then the words came, low, calm, almost emotionless. A curse, not shouted, not spoken in anger, simply delivered, as though he reached a conclusion. Balika looked at him. The drawing was gone, but that was not what unsettled her. Something in Angad's face felt unfamiliar. The return journey felt longer. The festival remained behind. The lights, the music, the crowds, everything slowly disappeared into darkness outside the bus window. Neither Angad nor Balika spoke too much. The city greeted them with the same indifference it always had. The following morning arrived quietly, like any other day. The public tap remained crowded, tea stalls opened for business, vendors occupied their usual corners. The city resumed its routine. Nothing appeared different. Until the news began spreading. At first, it moved through small conversations, a few words exchanged between strangers. Then larger groups formed. People stopped walking, people turned around, people repeated the same story again and again. The woman who had managed the temple festival had been found dead. The body had been discovered early that morning, not far from the temple grounds. The details travelled quickly, faster than truth ever could. Some spoke of murder, others spoke of revenge. A few claimed to know exactly what had happened. Most knew nothing at all. Yet everyone had an opinion. Balika listened from a distance. Her eyes slowly moved towards Angad. He showed no visible reaction, no surprise, no satisfaction, no fear, nothing. The tea in his hand remained untouched. The conversations around them continued growing louder. The story had already begun changing shape. Every new retelling added something, removed something, altered something. But one fact remained unchanged. The woman was dead.
Where stories begin.